Welcome to the Game Changers Podcast, bringing you insights and influencers from the wide world of sports, business, and personal development. Here's your host, former professional athlete, author, speaker, and game changer himself, Rennie Curran. It's time to get your head in the game.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Game Changers Podcast. Man, it's episode 14, and I'm so excited that you've decided to listen and to tune in. This is my first podcast for the year of 2018, and I can't believe it's already almost March. I was just sitting back like, man, I got to get on it, because I told myself that I want to keep doing this podcast. I want to keep sharing information and sharing knowledge that can inspire, that can empower anybody who listens. And I don't want another month to go by that I haven't been able to, or without me doing another podcast. So yeah, with this podcast, I really wanted to focus on transition. As we all know, transition is inevitable. I don't care if you're an athlete who's going through transition, if you're a business professional who just lost their job, if you're an entrepreneur who lost their business, or somebody who's been in a relationship, as I'm sure we can all identify with, someone whose relationship ended. Transition is something that's part of life. And I recently wrote an article that was on LinkedIn. If you haven't read it, make sure you get a chance and go by my profile or just on LinkedIn and type in this why athletes struggle with transition. And when I thought about this article and as I was writing it, I realized that so many other people in other walks of life struggle with transition as well. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more just about that. But first and foremost, I got to touch on just a few things that kind of happened since my last podcast, since episode 13. I'm still new to this podcasting game, so it's just something that I love, something that I do to kind of fine tune my craft as far as being a public speaker and with everything that I do. So I believe in getting reps, as it pertains to my past career as an athlete. It's all about getting reps. It's all about doing it over and over and over until it becomes, until you become a master at it. So that's why I love doing this podcast. But yeah, so with podcasts, or with the episode 13, since then, man, a lot's happened. Of course, I got to talk about my Bulldogs. Y'all know I'm a big Bulldog fan. I'm a former player, former linebacker with the Dogs. And so I'm going to just talk, as painful as it is, about the national championship game and the fact that we lost last second. I still have that conversation with people. They're like, how do you feel about the Dogs? And of course, I felt great about just how they did this entire season. I mean, the leadership was phenomenal. Everything that they were able to accomplish was awesome. And I was able to actually go to that national championship game and witness it firsthand. But man, I thought for sure that we had that thing won. And I was ready to celebrate, and then all of a sudden that quarterback just came off the bench and just stole it from us, man. So that hurt. But at the same time, I'm proud of my Dogs, proud of all those seniors, proud of what they did. Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Lorenzo Carter, Davin Bellamy. I mean, I could go on and on about those guys. They really, really did the Dog Nation proud. So kudos to you guys. The next thing that was kind of big that happened since the last episode was a good colleague passed away, a guy by the name of Edwin Jackson, who played linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts, a guy who was just a grinder. What more can you say about him, man? Character guy. He did everything right. I had the opportunity to train with him a couple times and to watch him train, and just started to watch his career because, like me, he was considered undersized. He was considered an undersized linebacker, so he, fought his way through playing at Westlake. Was able to walk on at Georgia Southern, was able to get a scholarship there and become a leader, and then also just took that tough route of being a free agent, an undrafted guy, went to the Arizona Cardinals, I believe, first, and then after that ended up getting another opportunity with the Colts. I mean, just tough, and to see his life end just by a drunk driver, man, it was the saddest thing ever. But at the same time, it was like a celebration because of the way that he lived his life and the things that he accomplished while he was here. And although, his life did end shortly, just, at 26 years old, I mean, you got to just be thankful because he was able to just touch so many lives. And you could see it just at the funeral ceremony. I mean, just the amount of people who came out and supported, and the amount of people who said just how great of a man that he was. I mean, everybody from the mayor to all his coaches and teammates. I mean, wow, it was just awesome the way that they celebrated him. And so, yeah, I really just wanted to use this podcast to pay homage to him and just the life that he lived and to challenge everybody out there, man, to live your best life. Like, nothing's guaranteed at all. You know, we all are blessed now to be in the 2018, but really, like, nothing at all is guaranteed. And so whatever you get, like whatever day you get, just be thankful and really go after what you want in this life and chase those dreams. Don't leave no stone unturned, because you never know what day will be your last. And so with that being said, I just want to touch on his life for a little bit, touch on my Bulldogs. So far, 2018 has been a great year. It's been just a year of overwhelming blessings. I've started out this year. I'm a full-time entrepreneur now that I'm done with football. And so it's things that really been picking up with public speaking and with personal development coaching, with just being able to have the opportunity to help business professionals, athletes, entrepreneurs, just with their careers, with their personal brand. So without further ado, I want to hop into the game changer quote for episode 14. It's by Priyanka Chopra. Priyanka is a Indian model, actress, producer, philanthropist. She does it all. Definitely a game changer in her own right. And her quote says, "Any transition is easier when you believe in yourself and your talent," which is so true. As I said before, transition is tough, but if you have that confidence, you have that discipline, and that just belief in your talents and your abilities, is so much easier. For me, my experience going through transition was definitely tough, but one of the things that helped me was that I actually started preparing for my transition before it occurred. So after my rookie season, I ended up getting released from the Tennessee Titans after going through my second training camp. That was new coaching staff. They drafted new linebackers. I wasn't really a part of their system. And what that gave me the opportunity to do was to start working on my personal brand and start building my business. So by the time I did get picked up by that second team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I was already on that route of becoming an entrepreneur and thinking about ways that I could provide value to different businesses and different industries outside of just football, which I see is a lot of people's issue, is that they don't have that kind of I don't want to say plan B, but they don't understand how to leverage plan A in order to create those other plans. And so with that being said, I want to talk about what makes transition so tough. And I came up with about 4 different reasons why. Of course, there's always going to be more reasons, but just going along with the article that I wrote, these are the reasons why I feel like transition is so tough. And I wanted to really just take a second to touch on each one of them because I feel like they're so important. And as you go through your transition, which, like I said, is going to come, it's inevitable. So you can sit there, if you're listening right now, you can believe that, you're above the influence of the effects that come from transition. But I'm telling you, like, it's going to come. So I really hope that you can hear me out on this and that you can share this podcast with somebody who is going through transition, because I know there's going to be somebody out there who's going through it. That's the only reason why I wanted to share this. But the first reason that transition is so tough, and I'm actually going to do a follow-up to this on ways that you can overcome transition. But as game changer, you got to know how to overcome this. The first reason that transition is so tough is because of loss of identity. Because of loss of identity. And I think about the fact that when you've been doing something, especially for so long, if it's your gift, if it's your talent, if it's something that you went to school for and you built your whole entire career around it, it can very easily become your identity. So whether you're that doctor, whether you're a business owner, whether you're an athlete like me, a lot of times we allow our titles in life, the things that we accomplish, the things that we do, to become who we are, which is one of the toughest reasons why when it comes time to transition or to go in a different lane, it's so tough, because it's like literally you are basically giving up a part of your life that was always there. It's like a part of you dies. And that's what I tell a lot of people who don't understand, like, why it's so tough for people especially athletes, to go through transition, because most of us start from 5 years old. I started at 10. And that was pretty much kind of late. But for most guys, they start playing that sport, or start, chasing that dream of being a musician or an actor, before they even really know who they are. So that automatically becomes part of their identity, and what makes them them. That's that thing that they're always being congratulated for. If they ever hear "good job," it's usually because of something they did, that's aligned with that title that they have. For me, most of my congrats and most of my newspaper articles and the different accolades I received were aligned with sports, were aligned with football. It wasn't necessarily academics, even though I wasn't, I was pretty smart. I'm not gonna say I was the smartest kid, but every once in a while I got a certificate here and there, or usually something for participation or just for showing up. But when it came to sports, that's where I got the bulk of the congratulatory, admiration and things like that. So that became a huge part of my identity. I mean, everything from just what gave me my appeal. Like when I went to a room, when people brought my name up, it was automatically associated with football, with sports. And if you think about most people, when people think about their name, or, when you have a conversation with somebody, the first thing they ask is, what do you do? And depending on what title you give, or what job that you give, it can almost sometimes define like your self-confidence. Like nobody likes to say, oh, like if you get asked what you do, like say, oh, I'm in transition, or oh, I work at, a fast food restaurant. Not that there's anything wrong with working at lower tier jobs, but you see what I'm saying? Like a lot of times we attach like our self-worth and just our confidence and everything to the job title that we have, especially in our society and in our culture. I've had times where, females have walked away from me based off of what I said, based off of my job title. So the society we live in kind of reinforces that belief, that your title gives you your worth, or gives you a sense of status or a sense of belonging, which is what makes it so tough. Like I said, when you start to transition, because it's hard even saying like, I don't know where I'm at. Like nobody's gonna tell you that. They're gonna say, "Oh, I'm in transition," or they're gonna say, "Oh, I'm searching right now." But to be in that position to say, or to realize like, you transition and you're not sure what the next move is, it's very, very tough and very, very challenging. So yeah, that's the first one, loss of identity. The second reason why it's so tough for athletes and many other people to transition successfully is because of that loss of structure and a loss of camaraderie. And that automatically makes me think about just being on a team. As an athlete, every day, pretty much, you spend more time with your teammates than you do with your own family. From the time that you wake up to the time you go to bed, usually you have an agenda. You have things that you are supposed to get done. You know what time you're supposed to be at practice. You know what time you're supposed to be in the film room. You know what days you're going to work out. You know what you're supposed to do for your workout when you show up. You know what time you're supposed to eat. You know what you're supposed to eat, how many calories. Everything is structured. Everything is laid out to the T. Everything is very, very strategic. You have a whole entire team around you. If you think about it, you got your coaches, you got your training staff, you got just so many people. If you're at the college level, you have that academic staff who's there with you, your advisors. They, will help you in terms of getting your classes together, all those things. And then if you're on a job, you have the culture that you're used to. You have your supervisor. You know what time you're supposed to clock in. You know what time you're supposed to clock out. You're a business owner. You just get into these certain routines, and you start to build those relationships with people who are aligned with what you do as well. So for me as an athlete, I had my teammates. I knew no matter what, even for guys who I didn't like, I knew that when it came down to it, when we're on the field, like he's got my back, I got his. And the same thing with those in the working world. As you're working, you may not like some of your workmates, but at the end of the day, you have a relationship with them because of what you do. The same thing goes for a relationship. Good or bad, that person is there. But what happens when all of a sudden you transition, you move away from that job, I move away from that team or you move away from that relationship, all of a sudden you're in foreign territory. All of a sudden, those people who are always around are all of a sudden nowhere to be found. You kind of start to lose that those bonds that you had with them. You start to lose that camaraderie you once had, because once you get into that real world, is what I call it. Once you transition out of what you've always done, it gets tougher and tougher to stay in touch, because those people who you may have left behind, it's not like y'all can just go and hang out like that. People have things to do. People have to, feed their families and whatnot. And people's time is very limited. So it becomes very, very tough to maintain that same structure and that same camaraderie that you once had. And in terms of an athlete, like, it's very, very hard to recreate that camaraderie, like, especially when you go to athletes working in the corporate world behind a desk. Not to make it sound so bad, but I mean, that's the reality, is going from, being in a situation where you cracking jokes in the locker room and you're making plays and y'all high-fiving and you got things that get you fired up, to now you're in this corporate world and everything's conservative and it doesn't have that competitive atmosphere like that you're used to. So that can be very, very, very tough. And so, yeah, that's the second reason why it's so tough to transition, is because of the loss of structure and loss of camaraderie. And I see, including myself, I had a tough time when it came to the structure piece, because being an entrepreneur, it's like, you don't have all these parameters around you. You don't have all these guardrails and all these people to hold you accountable. So you have to be your own boss. You have to be the person who holds yourself accountable, and you have to be the one to put those guardrails in place when it comes to getting what you need to get done. So I really, really had to focus hard on that, just building the right structure, building the right routines, maintaining that camaraderie with my teammates. I'm not going to say I'm perfect and I talk to all of them, but, you have to have some sense of camaraderie when you do transition, and some sense of, those connections that you maintain that can help you moving forward. The next reason why it's so hard for athletes and others to transition is because of that loss of perceived value. And just going back to what I said before, just about how a lot of times your title and the status that you once had, all of a sudden when you transition, in the mind of yourself and also in the mind of those in society, those who perceive you or who look at you in a certain way, they all of a sudden can start to, look at you in a different light. There was just a response that I got. Like, when I played in the NFL, there was a certain response I got, whether it was I was walking into a room or I went to a club. There was just a certain level of, expectation, or a certain level of revere, or whatever you want to call it. When I could say, oh, hey, I'm Rennie Curran, I played with the Tennessee Titans, as opposed to, hey, I'm Rennie Curran, I'm a free agent, or I retired. It's just that loss of value is real. Loss of perceived value, because the value is what you make it. If you look at yourself and you say, I'm still a valuable person, I still have a lot to offer this world, then your value won't diminish. But the minute you align your value to what society believes about you, of course, it's going to be at a lower value. I don't care who you are. And so that's one thing I had to accept, was that I cannot allow my value to be aligned with what the world said about me, or what level that they put me on because of my job title or my status as an athlete or as a free agent. I had to just separate myself from that belief in order to survive, and for my own mental health. And so I encourage you, man, don't let your value and your self-worth be aligned with your job title. If you're a doctor, if you're a CEO, great, awesome. If you're a top performing athlete, great, awesome. But still maintain your sense of identity and who you are, and never forget where you come from. You have to have that balance, because the people who I see struggle the most are those who really, really get caught up. I say get caught up in that fame, get caught up in the platform that they have. They get caught up in the little bit of authority that they may have. And what people don't realize is it's fleeting. It's not even real. So why go and build your whole entire identity, your whole entire self-worth around something that's fleeting? It's very, very hard to understand, but so many people that I see, whether it's athletes, entertainers, entrepreneurs, whatever it is, they get that success, and all of a sudden they allow it to make them get a inflated sense of ego. inflated sense of self-worth. And so I just plead with you, man, guard yourself from that. Always stay humble and, don't allow, once again, your value to be, aligned with your title and those things that at the end of the day don't even really matter. So that's the third one, loss of perceived value. And, as I said, everybody goes through this. And you can look at us as men, especially when we lose that position as the breadwinner. It's like basically you've taken everything from us. I saw my own father go through it. When I think about, because I'm a man of faith, when I think about when God first created us, it's like the first thing he did, in terms of Adam, he gave him a job. He gave him an assignment, which is deep when I think about it, because if you want to take away a man's confidence and his self-worth, take away his job. Take away his job. At the same time, when I think about that, I realize that you have to get back to the source. You have to get back to the source. So that leads me with the question to you is, what is your source? Is your job your source? Is your money your source? What is that thing that gives you that confidence and that belief and that promise that you're going to be okay? For most of us, our life is centered around what we do. And as long as that is your source, it's always going to be inconsistent. Because like I said, those things are fleeting. So with that being said, the last reason why people struggle with transition, last and final reason that I found, number 4, is lack of personal brand and lack of life skills. And this one is huge because from what I see, there's so many people out here, they have their job, they're doing well. The athlete that's been playing and doing well and either is getting a scholarship if they're on the high school level going to college, or, they're making plays and things are going well, or in the pros, they're making money. And so they're doing well and they don't focus on anything except for what they're doing. They don't take the time to have peripheral vision and look outside of just their industry, look outside of just their job, and think about making other connections with people in other industries and building up their skill sets and, having even an online presence. Something as simple as having a personal website to just show people what you do outside of just that main gig that you have. I feel like that's why so many people struggle, because it's like once you transition, if you don't have a personal brand, it's like you have to start from ground zero. You have to really, especially if you have to transition into a new industry, it's like you're starting from scratch. You don't have any connections in that industry. You don't have any prior knowledge. And so you're literally like a child, like starting over, which is one of the toughest things. And for me, that, like I said earlier in the podcast, that's what helped me most, is because when it did end, and it ended for me pretty recently, I tore my patella tendon in April. So I was forced to transition. But luckily for me, I had written my book. It's 2017 when I retired. But I had started writing my book and released my book in 2013, which got me into public speaking and doing a lot of the other things that I did. So it's like I also, not only did I have the football experience, but I also had 4 years of being an entrepreneur, 4 years of being an author, being a speaker, and doing my own business, even though it was tough. I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out a lot of times. But at least when that injury happened and I had to fully transition, I didn't have to scratch my head as far as knowing how I was going to monetize my brand, how I was going to monetize all the hard work that I put forth on the football field. And I didn't hit the panic button because of that, which is what you see with most people. Like, just imagine if your industry was to end tomorrow. If you're a doctor, if you're a teacher, whatever it is, if you're a teacher, I'll say this: what if, tomorrow they just said, okay, all classes are going to be online from now on. They're all everybody, every student is going to do just courses. We're not going to need any more teachers to be in the classrooms anymore. Like, how are you going to monetize? How are you going to be able to, keep those funds coming in? If you're a doctor and they say, okay, we're going to just have, we're going to shave down the doctor's industry. Half of it is going to be outsourced to India or something like that. Just to give an example, like, how would you be able to monetize? How would you be able to expand your brand and be prepared to still survive? So those are things that I believe you have to really, really think about, is your personal brand, how you're building it, how you're treating people, how you're carrying yourself, the name that you have in your industry. Because at the end of the day, like that's what I believe gives you the most value. Because as long as you don't have a personal brand, you are always replaceable. You're always one app away. You're always one disruptive innovation away from your job completely being gone. And so that's what I say on that, on personal branding and life skills as well. If you don't know how to network, if you don't have good leadership skills, if you don't have good public speaking skills, you definitely need to get on it and just start building up your skill sets. Those are the things that make a difference. And even when you look at those who have all the qualifications, the MBAs and the PhDs and whatnot, if you don't have good life skills, if you don't have a simple skill of likability or being able to be influential, that can hold you back in itself. Or if you are a person who's awkward to be around, for example, or you don't, like I said, have a good ability to network, those simple things can hold you back. Even when you have all the credentials in the world, even when you have the highest IQ, just even having emotional intelligence, being able to relate to others, being able to control your emotions, being able to get along with others. I think I said that already, but yeah, those things are just so important for your ultimate success. And that is one of the reasons, and the last reason why so many people struggle with transition. So with that being said, I just want to leave those 4 things with you. So it's loss of identity, loss of structure and camaraderie, loss of perceived value, and lack of personal brand and life skills. Those are all the reasons I found that make it so tough for people to overcome transition. I'm going to follow up just with another podcast about what you can do if you are going through transition, how you can overcome that time, how you can better yourself, how you can, not only help yourself, but help others who are going through that. Because I know there's people out there who have, little brothers or your husband or, your sister or whoever it is, your mom, they might be going through transition. And I'm hoping that by you listening to this, that you can be in a position to be able to help them or at least understand what they're going through, because that's one of the toughest things. The most frustrating thing is when you're going through transition and you're around people who don't understand like what the struggle is and understand just how to help you or just how to not help you and how to give you your space. And, I laugh about it now, but I mean, it was so frustrating to just sometimes even be around my family, like my parents. They're so worried when I was going through it, even though, I was farther along than a lot of people when it came to transition. But it was always like, oh, don't worry about anything. Don't worry about anything. I'm like, I'm good. Like, I'm not worried about anything. I'm fine. And it was just because they didn't really know how to relate to me or, really what was going on. Because obviously, my family's from Liberia. They'd never been professional athletes. They don't really know anything about that world and the transition as far as mentally and emotionally what you go through. So they were kind of left in the dark. And so I really don't want that for anybody else. And that's why I wanted to kind of share on the transition. And that being said, thank you so much for listening to the Game Changer podcast. As I said before, I'm going to follow up on podcast episode 15 with your solutions on, overcoming transition, helping those who are going through that transition, how you can encourage them, how you can empower them to get through that slump, to get through that time. Once again, Rennie Curran. I'm a speaker, author, personal development coach, and if I can ever help anybody out there, I work with students, I work with athletes, I work with business professionals, executives, surrounding personal development. So if you are somebody who is looking to establish a stronger personal brand, if you're somebody who is struggling in their personal life with goal setting, and you just feel like you're not really reaching your fullest potential and you feel like you have more, I'm here for you. If you're somebody who is looking to get into public speaking, or somebody who's looking to write their first book or just expand their brand, I'm here for you as well.